get your attention for a moment? I'm going to bore you today. Are you bored? No? Okay. My name is Megan. I want to thank all of you for being here, for being great patriots. We live in a world of difficult times right now, don't we? You're tired of the tyranny? Tired of the difficultness? You ready to get in the way? I'm ready to be in the way. Right? We got to stand in that gap because nobody's going to do it for us. We want to thank Park Theater for hosting us today. Give them a big round of applause. I want to thank CORE for helping out with any kind of security that was needed. I want to thank Cranston PD for being here. And I would also like to thank the security guards that were provided by the venue as well. Just so you know, exits here behind me. I want to go here, everywhere. They're out on either side, left and right as well. Restrooms are over there. You know where the bar is. There's also concession stands. If you didn't get pizza, it's your yellow ticket. Make sure you get a piece of pizza. Did you all put your raffle tickets in? Good deal. Got a good door prize at the end too, okay? This event is being recorded by a couple of great people. We have Pat Ford here with Coalition Radio. I'm probably going to say this wrong because I don't have my cheat sheet. I left it on the table over there, but Jessica Drew Day and her husband have Daylight wedding video. They are here also. And we have Karen and Mike. And I'm going to say this one wrong too, but it's Lyceum, I believe. Providence Lyceum, okay? So make sure you check them out and say thank you. We appreciate all of them. So now if everybody would rise, we are going to be joined by my handsome husband and co-host for Renegade Minds broadcast. He is going to lead everybody, if you would sing along in the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight
Good afternoon. I want to thank all our hosts for inviting me. The 1780 Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, drafted by then delegate to the constitutional, not the constitutional, but the delegates in Philadelphia, John Adams, is the world's oldest functioning written constitution. The United States Constitution, adopted in 1789, the primary author being James Madison, then a delegate in Philadelphia, soon to be a congressman from Virginia, and then the fourth president of the United States, made his draft based on the work of John Adams in the Constitution of Massachusetts. On October 11th, 1798, in his first year as president of the United States, the second president succeeding George Washington, John Adams said to the officers in Quincy, Massachusetts, of the 1st Brigade of the 3rd Division of the Militia of Massachusetts these words: "Gentlemen, our nation's Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other type of people." Adams and the overwhelming majority of the other founding fathers believed that in a society rattled by vices, the various mechanisms created by the Constitution would not be able to function properly, with the result that the democratic process in order would eventually be supplanted by despotism if we were not a country based on the revelation of God's natural law. Let us pray. Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech you that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of your favor and glad to do your divine will. Bless our land with honorable industry, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties and fashion into one united people the multitudes brought here out of many nations and many tongues. Endue with the spirit of wisdom those to whom in your name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to your natural law, we may show forth your praise among all the nations of the earth seeking true freedom. In the time of our prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in the day of trouble, suffer not our trust in you to ever fail. All of which we ask in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ the Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Mark Alloway. Everybody has one of these, right? If you'd look at the back, a special thanks. There are some great people who have been involved in this event, and I just want to extend a thank you to every single one of them. I was very honored to be asked to do this today, and I'm very grateful for all of you to be here. Any military or veterans in the audience, if you will raise your hand or stand, please. And let's give them a very big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much. Everyone in this room knows that freedom is not free, and you guys pay the ultimate sacrifice and risk everything to do things so that we can be free, and we appreciate you. Now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce someone I have actually enjoyed getting to know quite a bit over the last few months. We did an interview with him on our podcast, and he is just fantastic. He's got the smile for days, and he's got the facts to back up every single issue he brings up. I would like to welcome Ivan Raiklin to the stage, please.
All right, let's see here. The light's in the way. I'm glad we have a microphone that's moving. Sorry, cameraman. I like to walk around. So first off, I'm going to start off a little bit of administrivia to thank folks for setting this thing up. Then I'm going to go into a story arc dating back to when our constitutional principles were created, how I fit into this entire 250-year experiment narrative before I tee up the most respected person in this country. So, as I was in the backstage there in the green room, I saw Brewed Awakenings provided me a mug and some coffee. I just ran out, by the way, of coffee, so thank you. Also, I got 3 t-shirts, one from Dan's Place, one from Surplus Provisions, and Mid-State Gun Company. So thank you for that. This one was shocking for me. So usually at these events that I go to, election integrity, the deep state CCP-led Democrats and the CCP Republicans, they don't show up to these. But sometimes there's one or so that have the courage to actually go to these venues, to listen in and learn. To those people, I always try to say thank you. And that one person that I was able to meet earlier out there in the lobby is Representative Patricia Morgan. Thank you for showing up. Where are you? Yes! We need to get behind her in January when she's going to drop a bill to take out Eric from Rhode Island. I'm going to be up here. You just tell me what you need, ma'am. And lastly, she doesn't like her name to be mentioned. The person that set this whole thing up, since I don't want to get on her bad side, so I won't mention her name. What's her name, the lady that runs RI, Fair Elections and Education? Again? Hey, I didn't say your name, so you're good. All right. So first off, I believe this is the first time I've ever stopped in Rhode Island. This is my debut, if you will. I've driven through here on the way up to Massachusetts when I used to be in the Massachusetts National Guard up in Cambridge. But the good thing that I've learned about Rhode Island, that I respect fully as a constitutional lawyer and a student of the Constitution, is you guys were 2 months ahead of the rest of these slow colonies. What happened? May 4th of 1776, you said what? What did y'all say? You rejected the crown and you declared your independence 2 full months to the day of the rest of the colonies. For that, thank you. Good stuff, good stuff. You may be called to do something similar here shortly, in the similar vein. Of course, in the most peaceful and patriotic manner ever known in the history of humanity. So, that started things off. Declaration of Independence by the rest of the 13 colonies, and then we created our Constitution, actually Articles of Confederation, and then our Constitution, which is the framework that we're under now. Here's the problem. On Constitution Day today, couple decades later, September 17, 1787, it's because that's when the ratification occurred of the Constitution currently, where we had 7 articles, and later, over the course of the last almost 250 years, another 27 amendments were created. Now, for those veterans that stood up earlier at the beginning of this, and for everybody that's watching or going to watch this, here is our current problem in our country. We have a society, a government, and our military that may be able to know the oath of office, may be able to know where it is in our U.S. code, but they have no clue what's in that document. 0. Now, I'm not going to call people out here. You're going to look yourselves in the mirror later, and say for yourself, do you really know the Constitution? And you're thinking to yourself, well, why should I know it? Especially today on Constitution Day. Well, I'm going to tell you, the only thing that binds us as a society, as a whole, since we have freedom of religion, right, as one of the founding tenets, the one cultural unifying factor is the way that you and I interact with each other. And that's called a rule. That's a rule book behind it, right? You, younger generation, older generation, we have one binding principle, the foundational principle that we have to be adhering to. And it's our rule book, the Constitution. As America, as states that interact with each other. How do we know that that is being violated by our fellow citizen, or more importantly, our constitutional actors within the legislative branch at the federal level, the executive branch, the current illegitimate and lawless executive branch, or the Article 3 branch, which is the judiciary, or the state legislatures? Sir, go ahead. The illegitimate belligerent currently squatting in our White House that's captured and tethered to the interests of the Chinese Communist Party, Mr. Brandon. I think that's what you pronounce. I'm hard to hear. Those are your words, not mine. That's what I heard. So, let's move forward, right? So those are our foundational principles. We need to understand how our country was created and how we developed and improved. So let's fast forward. We had a couple problems, right? What was it, 80 years later, in the 1860s? We had to resolve that in a unconventional manner, right, compared to the other decades. Fast forward to another 100 years or so, 110, 116 to be specific. So in the 1970s, there was a family that was in the Soviet Union that essentially departed because there was political persecution being done on this family in the Soviet Union that was residing in Leningrad, and the father of this family was studying in Moscow, Russia, Soviet Union, but he was writing a thesis about how the current leadership in the Soviet Union, Khrushchev, came back after his trip from Iowa to say that that country was going to grow crops from north to south. I don't know you, I'm not a horticulturalist, if you will, or an agricultural guru, but I don't think you can grow corn in Siberia or in the Arctic Circle, right? But what happens if you call out the individual at the leadership saying that, hey buddy, you're kind of a moron. But more politely, that economically isn't going to fly. That's called speaking truth to power, right? What happens when you speak truth to power in a communist country? Somebody yell it out. You get persecuted, right? You can go to the gulag in Siberia. Another option is your thesis chair basically tells you, I was able to protect you from the KGB because you were telling truth to power, and you're not going to be able to finish your thesis. You're going to have to go back, and basically you're now going to continue to be a second and now third-class citizen because you disagree with the falsehoods of the regime. So then what happens? This guy starts to study and learn, becomes an alcoholic because there's really nothing else to do in the countryside, right? In the Soviet Union. Vodka. Not much TV, not much social media in the 70s. So you read dissident information, bootleg tapes, and you learn about potentially what's going on as alternate ideas throughout the world. And then all of a sudden, the United States passes a law called the Jackson-Vanik Amendment. Has anybody heard of that? You've heard of it. Should I call on you to ask you? Okay. The Jackson-Vanik Amendment was a law that allowed Soviet Jews to flee the Soviet Union to the United States legally. So on one side, you have a Soviet Jew agnostic, if you will, and then you have the mom of this family, Eastern Orthodox. And what happens next? 1974. This family with a 5- and 6-year-old girls and a 10-month-old boy comes to the United States. And in 1976, the bicentennial year, I was born in New York. So they fled the Soviet Union because of that political persecution, thinking they're going to be able to live the American dream here, and they did. Learned English, got his PhD, started at Columbia University in New York after learning English, right? Finished off at the New School for Social Research. Became a professor at the University of Northern Iowa. That's where I finished college, went to ROTC, and 25 years later, did service in the active duty, National Guard, reserves, in our national security ecosystem. When I wasn't on active, picked up a law degree, and I thought to myself, things are going great. Life is good. And then 2020 rolls around. An illegally conducted and then subsequently illegally certified election. Who disagrees with that? Who disagrees that that occurred? Not a single person in here. What happens to me and you when we say that, not in person, but online? Same thing that happened to the dissident in the Soviet Union, right? Who's on Telegram? Who's on Rumble? Who's on Truth Social? Is that the dissident press? It's about to be mainstream. So, what I'm trying to get at here is to convey the story that this thing is coming full circle. We got the Chinese Communist Party that's literally doing what the Soviets were trying to do to the United States in the 60s, 70s, 80s with ideological subversion, leveraging social media, recruiting key individuals in our country to be able to change the psyche of our children in schools, of the entire class of citizenry through big media, big tech, etc. And then you have a compliant, at a minimum compliant, CCP leveraged Democrat Party and a CCP leveraged Republican Party because of the donor class that relies on so much money from our foreign adversaries to be able to remain in power. And the purpose of this event is local action equals what? National impact. So right now, we collectively do not have the resources to take out the global enemy. And I'm talking about the commies. In order to crush the commies, we have to backpedal. We have to kind of see, well, we have to take out the deep state first, right? The deep state, I like to say, we have to castrate the deep state. If they want to promote this castration and mutilation of children, let's pivot that and say, you know what? Let's do that to the enemy, which is the deep state and then the commies, right? Well, let's back that up. We have to do it at the state level. And guess what happened 2 days ago, I think it was. Or was it yesterday? In Texas. Huh? I think this week and next week are massively going to result in wins, and here's why, before I close. We have to take our townships and New Englands back, right? And the way you do that is you look yourself in the mirror. Like, it's our generations that's going to take this thing back. So you start out with the school boards, you start out with the townships, the mechanisms that run the elections, and you start to support. If you can't do it yourself, you support who can. And then we take over the counties. How many people does it take? 2, 3 close advocates can really take over the narrative of a county, right? And then you start to develop that network to take over the state. Texas is the first state, I would argue, that is literally, we just took it back from the CCP Republicans. Because that was the stake in the heart of the Bush criminal syndicate. Now we got to continue further. This week we're going to have the former Capitol Police Chief Stephen's son testifying in detail of what actually took place on January 6th. If you've been following my work, I suspect he's going to say stuff that's very interesting. And so we're going to develop that, and we're going to start taking things over. And if Matt Gaetz does what he basically is about to do, so if we're castrating the deep state down at the local level, and Matt Gaetz says, you know what, I've had enough. The Ukraine pin-loving, right? Kevin McCarthy, he's about to pay the piper. Called the American people. Now, I would say this, the most popular person and the most humble person and the most respected person, in my opinion, and I talk to a lot of people nationally in this country that understands every single component that I just explained. The township level, the state level, the national, the deep state and all those institutions, the interagency, the global order. Why, you may ask? A lot of people he doesn't talk about it. Most people don't understand the context of what this gentleman brings to the table. Before he was the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, he was the Deputy Director of National Intelligence for Partner Engagement. In that role, he is to coordinate with all of the national interagency, the national security apparatus, foreign and intelligence stuff, military, foreign policy, but more importantly, working with DHS, DOJ, tribal leaders, state intel capabilities and law enforcement capabilities, all the way down to city level. There's not a single person in this current illegitimate administration or any other previous administration that was legitimate that can contextualize what is going on in this country and how to fix it. And it is my absolute, I know people say this, it's a cliche, but the reason why it is the utmost honor to introduce General Flynn to you is because he represents exactly what my father went through. General Michael Flynn.
Okay. You're great, you're great. Did any of the protesters get in? I asked them, I said it, because I told them, they said they weren't allowed in, and I said, I wasn't really sure what the answer was, so I came in and found out, and Sarah told me, well, you had to RSVP by a certain time, so I went back out there and told the young lady out there and said she probably didn't RSVP, but I think I can get you in if you want to come in. So did any of them come in? That's too bad. That's too bad. No, not really. Okay. I always take people through a little drill because this is a really important time. And so how we got here, well, first of all, when I look in an audience, I used to help out in churches and stuff when I was in the military. And one of the priests that I used to work with, his name was D'Agostino. He was from Fall River, actually. And he was an Army major, nice guy. And he used to help out. But he used to rope off the back of the church, of the pews, because he never wanted anybody sneaking out after communion. So he would have me stand up. This is most of the time was at Fort Bragg. I'd stand up in the front on the altar, and I would have to go, back there to rope off the pews. And because there's always somebody that has their special seat in church, right? Everybody knows that. You got your special place where you go, the right side, the left side, the front, the back. And the people that are in the back, they typically want to sneak out, right? So he used to say, you can move up, because and this always happens with VIP stuff, or, we got all kinds of reserved seats up here. We got a whole row of nobody, right? So, if you're back there and you feel okay, you can move up. Do you want to do that? Anybody that wants to move up, you're more than welcome to move up. And, it's always hard to do that. It's always hard to do that because, it's like church, right? Always like, if you're really not sure about what are you going to look back. Right, everybody understands what I'm talking about. Everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's Sunday, too, right? Sunday. So, okay. So, I'm going to step back a little bit because I don't want to overwhelm this first and second row here. I do normally stand when I'm speaking. I do normally stand like this, and there's a reason why I do it. The reason why I do it, especially on a stage like this, when you have a stage. Yesterday, we were up in New Hampshire with a group of about 400 or 500 people, and I usually stand on a stage like this. I couldn't do it yesterday because there was a bunch of speakers and stuff, but there's a metaphor for why I stand on a stage like this. And the metaphor is because this is kind of where the United States of America is at. Okay, I'm standing with my size 12s halfway off the edge of the dais here, and that's I sort of use that as a metaphor to speak about where America is today. That we're at the edge of a cliff, right? But I actually stopped saying that because we're now in the abyss. So this country, and I'm going to walk through a bunch of things, okay? So, hi. It's good to see you again. I actually got to be really on my best behavior because I got my mother-in-law here. Pat. My mother-in-law, Pat Andrade. And my beautiful aunt, Alice. And, Pat's husband, deceased husband now, great patriot, great man, George Andrade. Maybe there's a few people in here that knew that name. He's a retired state trooper from the Rhode Island State Police here, and just a great friend, great mentor for me. And anyway, we're our whole family. So when we look at this thing, this is like one big family here, right? Because America is one big family, and if you pay really close attention to what I don't say, you'll understand what I'm talking about. You really will walk out of here really, truly understanding kind of where we are, of the things that I don't say. I will tell you that I stay in relatively close contact with various people. People like Tucker Carlson, as an example. Tucker Carlson, great. He's a great guy. Tucker's a great guy. He's a good friend. He's down in Argentina. Did anybody see the Tucker Carlson interview with the Argentinian, the candidate for one of the major parties in Argentina? And I talk about Argentina like Ivan was talking about his father over in the Soviet Union, and basically having to get out and come to America, right? People, we don't know in this country, and there's probably a few, and I'll ask the question here in a second, how many. We don't understand when you leave your country to go to another country. I mean, you think about that, right? I mean, is there anybody here's first generation has left another country? Yeah, thank you. And I recognize you because it's like, I love having conversations with people who are first generation Americans, even if they've been here for a while and they came over as kids. Let's say, I love to have that conversation with them because the big question is why? Why did you leave your country? And so one of the things that I would ask you to do, for those that can, because it is on various social media, and some people aren't on social media, and the big media is not going to carry Tucker as an example. I mean, he got booted out of Fox, right? But the guy that he interviewed, Millet, his name is Millet. He's a professional soccer player, right? Professional football player. He's a goalie. Became a businessman. But one of the things that he talked about was he talked about the history of Argentina, right? And Argentina, for well over 100 years, has been a communist nation. Straight communist nation. Argentina, right? So this guy is, if you listen to him, this guy is he's like an Argentina first type candidate. And, and he was really, really strong. And Tucker was just, Tucker's watching the world. And for those that don't know, or most of you probably don't, but Tucker for a long time was kind of like, I don't know about all this stuff going on in the country. We go through these political cycles, and we're just going through another political cycle. We're just going through another sort of troubled time where it's sort of politics as usual. And that was probably about a year and a half ago, where he had like he had an epiphany, right? He had an epiphany where suddenly he realized, probably a little bit before last summer, last spring, a year ago. And I'm telling you this because this is a conversation that I've had with him. And I said, what did you make of it? Like, why did you all of a sudden, because Tucker was really not harsh to me, but he wasn't somebody who I really knew, other than having been on various networks that I got interviewed by and all that sort of stuff, in the years past. And I said, when was it that you came around, or what happened? And he said, I started to come around because of my case, okay? And it's like trying to, tell the folks outside, and I go through that all the time. It's like my mom used to teach us, sticks and stones will break your bones, and names will never hurt you, right? So, you get past that because you kind of know who you are in life, right? I always tell people I'm beyond the nonsense stage of my life, right? I always use the phrase, the older that I get, the smarter my father becomes, right? So, and he said, when I saw what happened to you, because he's a studied guy, meaning he really studies people. He really, really has a keen understanding of Washington, and he has a keen understanding of the kinds of issues that he grapples with and grabs hold of. And he said, what really happened, what really changed me, was when your case was dismissed. And then he said, then I went back through everything. I went back through everything, and I started looking at everything, and I'm saying, oh my God, look at what's going on. Because this is something that has never happened in our country ever. So me standing up here as a retired general, I grew up in Rhode Island, all kinds of great stories about Rhode Island, and then I go off to the military, I go to work for a president of the United States, and then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose, right? And as he's going through this, and he and I are kind of communicating, not all that much, but enough to where we began to understand, and then lately really quite a bit, where you start to talk to somebody who really deeply understands what's going on, and I'm now talking about Tucker, and of course I deeply understand what's going on, not just with my whole situation and all the things surrounding it, but I have a very, very deep understanding of what is happening to our country, okay? And you don't get to the places that I've risen to in the military. You don't get to like some of these jobs because it's like somebody just sprinkled fairy dust and poof, you're a general, right? You really work your tail off to get to those levels and to get into some of the assignments that I had, to go work for the people that I work for. I always tell people that Barack Obama, he appointed me twice. He chose me twice to serve in some really, really critical jobs, right? Barack Obama. I always tell people that, especially growing up here in Rhode Island, I was a Democrat my whole life. I really just only changed parties a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago. Even when I was running with President Trump, when I was running with President Trump in 2016, he narrowed the field of vice presidents down to 4 names, Okay, those four, and that was it was in June of 2016. June of 2016, those four names were Chris Christie, Mike Pence, Newt Gingrich, and Mike Flynn. Okay, those were the four names. And you know, and of those four names, of course, he then narrowed it down further and chose Mike Pence to be his running mate. You know, so you know, I mean, geez, I won't go there. But the interesting thing is, of the four, three of them were long-time Republican establishment people, right? I mean, they were long-time establishment people. The fourth guy was me, and I was by being registered or by sort of political ideology, I guess. I mean, I was a Democrat registered, right? Yeah, but yet I had served 3.5 decades in the military. So when Trump calls me up to say, because you go through all this vetting process, and he calls me up finally about a couple of days before the 2016 convention, and he goes, maybe on another day I could be a Democrat and we'd run together. But he goes, it's not going to work out. He goes, I'm going with Mike Pence. And the next day he went to Indiana and he sat down with Mike Pence. And we kidded each other on the phone about, just the way the world was, so I tell you all this because, to me, this is not about party affiliation. That's why I would love to have some of these people come in, because it's like they want to call your names, they want to yell at you, and it just is meaningless. It's like it just sucks the oxygen out of a room, out of the air. And, it's like, it's worthless. It's just not the time that we need right now, because we're running out of time, okay? So we have all kinds of things going on in this country, a lot of things. And I don't want to get into all the problems of, the border and the economy and schools and all this stuff. One of the things, I was up in New Hampshire there yesterday talking to the chief of police of the town that we were in, and I just, like I always do, and I said to the chief, I said, so what's your biggest problem up here? And I thought he was going to say something else. He goes, fentanyl. It's our biggest problem. You got people dying left and right, kids dying left and right. It's what he told me. This is yesterday. And I'm thinking to myself, God, how do we continue to go down this path? And so everybody knows fentanyl is a Chinese-produced drug. It's a Chinese Communist Party produced narcotic. And so it's like, if you want to take over a country, if you want to defeat an adversary, just, drug them to death, right? I mean, just this past year, we've had over 100,000, citizens, American citizens, killed from fentanyl. And some of those were police officers on the streets that had to deal with it. And they collapsed and died because it's such a powerful drug. And it's such an addicting drug. So, but this is not about that either. This is about the direction of this country. Okay, it's about the direction of this country. So, Sarah and Megan, and on the back of that sheet, if you want to help them, right? There's a couple of websites that these are young ladies who are like, Sarah met my buddy Victor Meller, who he grew up here in Rhode Island. We took a ride through. Anybody from Woonsocket? There you go. We took a ride through Woonsocket today, because that's where he grew up. In the up in the couple of areas up there. It's really interesting. I hadn't been up there since I played high school football. But anyway, Megan Brillon and Sarah Vieira, on the back here, and I do, thank all of the sponsors, which are very kind of you to do this, to include this venue. A lot of times these venues don't open up. They will close their doors. And I'm not even sure, did they do the drag brunch here? They did? Yeah, so Vic and I were going to come to the drag brunch today. And then earlier, because, you get hungry on a Sunday, right? And we weren't kidding. We're going to come in here because it's like, you know what? I want to make sure that I'm dealing with everybody. This is not just dealing with somebody who's MAGA, right? This is everybody in this country, because we are going to lose this country. We will lose this country. So, they have on the back there, it says, Rhode Island Fair Elections and Education So Rhode Island Fair Elections and Education.com. The .com is not there. And then the other one is RhodeForIntegrity.com. RhodeForIntegrity.com. And Megan, and I guess, and Joe, do you guys have your 5:30 in the morning show? You know, they have their 5:30 in the morning show, which is live, and then they put it out on Rumble, so anybody that understands Rumble. So that's, you know, if you want to help them, you know, those are a couple of websites, you know, write them a check and send it to them, because we need people in this country, and that's kind of my thing right now. So I'm going around all over this country, and I use this phrase, local action has a national impact. Local action has a national impact, because we will solve nothing in Washington, D.C. as things are today. Nothing's going to be solved. I mean, there's a big debate between Matt Gaetz and Speaker McCarthy right now, and Gaetz is really attacking McCarthy, and you know, they're just coming off of 7 weeks of paid vacation, taxpayer paid vacation. You know, we already have a ton of evidence to at least strongly allege, I mean, it's really there, I mean, if you look at it, but I'll just say strongly allege that the current occupant of the White House, while he was the Vice President of the United States of America, took not only one bribe, but a couple of bribes from 2 different parts of the world. And it's really unbelievable, because you kind of go, so, you know, I mean, this is blatant. There's a paperwork trail, there's evidence, there's witnesses, there's whistleblowers, there's testimony, there's depositions. There's already legal actions that are underway. And yet the political people in Washington, D.C., they're not going to do anything. So people come to me, when is somebody going to be held accountable? And I always tell them that the only time that this country has actually operated at a level that has functioned relatively okay is when we've had great leaders in the White House. Okay, great leaders in the White House. And there's only like maybe this many, okay, right now in our history. And that includes people like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. So there's 2, right? So there's maybe 3 more sprinkled throughout the 250 years that Ivan talked about that are really great leaders. The great leaders that caused the country to just really redefine itself and move forward in a very positive direction. Because that's what we need right now. We need that right now. Now, you know, I do believe that, you know, I have my eye, and I'm fully, you know, in support of one particular candidate. But, you know, what we normally do with presidents, so once a president's out of office, the typical thing to do, this is normal, this is historic. Even way back when Washington left after his second term, they kind of said to him, well, how can we use you, right? So that, you know, the Adamses and the Jeffersons, and then subsequent to them. What should we do with presidents who just served the country? And they started thinking about it, and they would make sure that they got involved in diplomatic conversations with foreign powers. They would make sure they got involved in trade negotiations, because these were presidents who had access and knowledge and insight and support. And we've been doing that all the way through our country. And then in the last probably 50 years or so, a lot of other presidents that have left office, what has happened is they've done things like they've gotten involved in homelessness, or they get involved in welfare, or they get involved in health care. They get involved in big issues, and they do it on behalf of the country. Okay? Or they get involved in veterans issues, and they do it on behalf of the country, and they're supported. They're supported by the country. You know, a president of the United States gets a lifetime Secret Service. He gets a lifetime pension. There's money. There's a big budget. It's a pretty big budget that's given to the president of the United States to be able to do things on behalf of the country because he was a president. And yet here we now are taking a former president, and it's like, talk about it, you know, being attacked. And I understand being attacked. But, you know, attacked throughout the presidency, and then now attacking in this continuous way, instead of saying, look, instead of somebody with reason, because we've lost our minds, folks. We've lost reason in this country. Exactly. We've lost reason. So instead of people sitting there in our leadership in our country and going, okay, so this guy really knew economics. He really knew trade. And we got problems with China, right? We got problems with all kinds of countries overseas. You know, there's an entire global alliance that's right now has formed against the United States of America. And I don't expect you to know this, but I'm telling you, it's like 75% of the world's population in that global alliance. 75% of the world's population, okay? Just 5 of those countries in that global alliance come to about 50% of the world's population. And those 5 are all communist countries. So this rise of communism, this use of former presidents, yet here we are, we're going through this craziness in this country, not just the attack on a former president of the United States, it's up to like 76 felonies, I think. And it's at least 725 to 750 years of prison. I mean, just the insanity of that alone. You know, I'd have been worried if they only indicted him from one thing or 2 things. I'd have been, oh man, maybe they do got something. But the fact that they got him in 4 courts with all this craziness, you know that this is so politically charged. And so how do we get here, right? How do we get here? And then how do we get out of it? How do we get out of it? When I always tell people, and I'll tell it to you, we have to stop blaming, you know, politics. We got to stop blaming Washington. We got to stop blaming, you know, Providence or whatever county or whatever, you know, township you're in, whatever council members. We always blame. We always go and say we point the finger at others instead of looking at ourselves. You know, in this country, when there's a presidential election, so 2024, 2020, 2016, 2012, 2008, the average turnout for presidential elections in this country is about 65%. Okay, so when we're voting for somebody to lead this country forward, right, to say, follow me, right, only like 65% of the people turn out to vote. That means 35% stay home. And they go, I don't do that stuff. You know, those politicians are all corrupt, right? That's really bad. And so for those that do that, you get an F for citizenship. Now that's on presidential elections. Now, I'm a Catholic. Okay, I'm a Catholic. And I've studied this because it's like, I'm trying to figure out what's the psyche of the American people and why is it that we are so, you know, slow to the switch about getting involved in our communities. This is what this is all about. That's why we're here. It's just to encourage you to get involved in your communities. I don't care which community you come from. I expect most of you are probably from Rhode Island, maybe some from Massachusetts. But we got to get more involved in our communities. And part of it is, so, you know, every 2 years, we have a federal election. So 2022 was a federal election for Congress. The turnout was around 50%, 50% for senators, congressmen, governors. It's terrible. Average, right? Average. I mentioned Catholics. The Christian vote in this country, so if all Christians voted, all that are registered, and I say Christians, that's every ecumenical faith, you know, to include Catholic. If all Christians voted, it's actually about, registered, it's actually about 60 to 63% of the voting public are some Christian faith, whether it's Catholic, whether it's Baptist, Episcopalian, Lutheran, whatever, Presbyterian, doesn't matter, or non-denominational Christian. So what I'm telling you is it's most of the voting base in this country, yet they don't go and vote. And then inside the Catholic community is the largest voting bloc in the country. Okay, the largest voting bloc in the country are Catholics. So inside of that Christian 60, let's just say 60%, inside of that, it's a gigantic, it's like more than half of that number, Catholics. Okay? Now Catholics of all faiths, they vote at about 47% Democrat, and then the rest vote Republican. So there's these, so you really got to look at and analyze the numbers. And then you can start to, once you understand the numbers and you understand kind of what's going on and maybe what point am I getting at, part of it is you have to understand who is voting. Like, how are you a citizen? I mean, I know, and the people that served, or maybe there's law enforcement in here, or whatever, or however you're serving this country. So I know what service is, and I know what being a good citizen is. But being a good citizen means to vote. Means to vote. It's not just protecting the vote. It's not just getting out the vote and going and doing, registrations and mail-ins and all the kind of stuff that we do. This is actually about, first we got to figure out that we're going to get out the vote. And I can tell you that if you go down to your county registrar, any one of the 5 counties we got here in Rhode Island, you go down to the county registrar, you can get a copy of the registered list of voters. And you can look and go, okay, Mike Flynn. So I used to be registered right down here in Newport County, right? So I'm probably still registered. I'm probably still I mean, now that I think about it, right? I mean, what I probably should do is call down there and go, did you take me off the rolls? Because I'm registered down in Florida now, right? I'm registered down in Florida. So, big point, we've got to understand who's voting, who's not voting, because the other thing we have is we have these off-cycle elections. This is all about voter integrity, folks. This is all about understanding who we are as citizens in this country. Not Democrats, not Republicans, not Libertarians, not any of that stuff. Just citizens. Because I know when I talk to people, when I talk to reasonable people that want to have a good conversation, and I ask them, well, do you love the country? Do you love America? Yeah, well, I mean, but I'm not talking about this crowd. I'm talking about the 10 or 12 that were outside, right? I mean, the 3 that came for the drag brunch, trust me, they love this country because otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to do that, right? They had the right to be able to do that. And they did it because I looked at it because I was like, I'm serious. I want to go meet them because I love to have these conversations. And it was adults only, thank God. It was adults only. So whatever, a couple showed up. But when they start to impose on children, that's a different issue, right? It becomes a much, much different issue. So off-cycle elections like school boards, county commissioners, county recorders, sheriffs, right? We vote for sheriffs. Some of these, and primaries. Primaries is another bone, right? Primaries, we have primaries, and everybody goes, oh, I ain't gonna go vote in a primary. I ain't gonna go vote in a primary. I'll just wait till the general and see, what the outcome is. That means that you've given up. It means you've given up, and your neighbors have given up, and your friends have given up. They've given up. Because if all of a sudden, some person wins the primary, and they're like, not the person that you wanted, then what do? You don't go vote. Because then it's like, I don't like that person. Well, it's probably because you didn't vote in the primary. Right? I mean, and I know that there's more representatives than the one that was recognized. There's other some other politicians here. Can you guys stand up? Because I know there's a couple others. Please stand up. There's representatives or members of this. Yeah, they probably don't run out. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I don't know who you guys are. Thank you very much. Yeah. So I thank you for what you're doing. You're serving. And you guys know what I'm talking about. So when there's a vote that's about to happen, you want everybody to go out there and vote for you. In this state, you can become, like I think they just did something for the Democrat governor, I think here, if I'm not mistaken, where like the person that won the primary, they won with like 31% of the vote. 31% of the vote. I mean, I was never a big fan of I met actually Senator John Chafee, former Secretary of the Navy, the father. I met him when I was a child, and it really it was interesting and a great man. I never met his son, but when I looked at because I always paid attention around politics, I'm watching the son become governor, Governor Chafee, and he won as the governor with 35% of the vote. 35% of the vote. I mean, so that means like 65% of the people of the state, which is the majority, right, didn't vote for him because people don't get out there and vote. It's how important it is. We have 250 years of sacrifice by people in this country who were willing to give their lives up for this country and did, just so you can go and vote. Okay, I don't care if you're purple with pink polka dots. I don't care what your persuasion is. I really don't. What I care about is I care about whether or not you care about this country. That's it. That is it. It's so you know, as we go forward on things, I always ask, you know, and I did this drill yesterday, and that's why I'm carrying this piece of paper, and I'll go through this quickly, and then I'll stop. We are in a historic period of time right now here in the United States of America. You have never met, none of you have ever met anybody from Byzantine, I'll bet, right? You ever met anybody from Byzantine? You even know what Byzantine is? Not Ovaltine, right? Byzantine. Byzantine is the oldest empire in the history of the world. Okay, it's the oldest empire in the history of the world. So have you ever met anybody from Mesopotamia? No. So these are all rhetoric, right? Have you ever met anybody from the Carthaginian Empire? No. Have you ever met anybody from the Athenian Empire? No. Ottoman? No. Roman? No. The British Empire? No, because the British Empire collapsed in 1908, so there's nobody alive anymore that existed during the British Empire. Okay? The Athenian Empire, when it collapsed very quickly. And these were empires. These were like, you know, these were empires at the time. They were like the dominant force on the planet. They existed, you know, in geographic terms, they kind of ran the world, right? From Byzantine, which was out in the Middle East, you know, to the British Empire, where the famous phrase, the sun never sets on the British Empire, doesn't exist anymore, right? They are a collapsing nation. Great Britain. I have a lot of friends in Great Britain. So now we have the American Empire. Where does the American Empire stand? When a nation rises and when a nation falls, you know, between those 2 points, there's a sustainability that occurs, right? It can be a bit of a wavy thing with wars and, you know, and diseases and depressions and all kinds of stuff, and like everything that we've gone through over our 250 years, right? But when it collapses quickly. If you study these empires, which I have, I've had the privilege to be able to study them and really deeply, you know, try to understand them. They collapse, and they collapse quickly. They collapse quickly because they're overextended. The federal government, so to speak, the governments become too large, too bureaucratic. I mean, Athens was a democracy, which we are, and a republic, which we are. Okay, Athens was that. When Athens collapsed, it collapsed into a group of families. And then they went and took their own little fiefdoms around the empire, and that was the end of it. Now if you go on a visit to Greece, you know, you see all these old things on, you know, you see the Acropolis and some of these other places out there, and it's all run down. It's all broken down. It's damaged. It's like just old stuff because they have not been able to recreate it because they collapsed. They collapsed mainly because of ideology, especially ideology. Right now, we have ideology that's creeping into the United States of America, and it is a form of communism, socialism, Marxism, whatever you want to call it, right? It is a form of those ideologies, those things, and it's been going on for not like, you know, since Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump didn't cause this. It's been going on for 100 years. It's been going on for a long time. So you really have to deeply understand all this. So everything that I'm telling you, these are real things. These are real factors that we are dealing with as a nation. And so what I'm asking you to do is, and like I say, local action has a national impact. You get involved in your local community. You know, what happens up someplace else may not even matter. You'd like it to change. You'd like to see some change. But you go to vote and you go, geez, you know, look at how good everything is. And then all of a sudden you go vote and you go, why would anybody vote for all these bad things, right? So I took these 5th graders through a class the other day. I was in Oklahoma about 2 weeks ago. I'm going to do this with you all just to wake you up a little bit. And these are 5th graders, right? And remember that show where you're smarter than a 5th grader, right? This is a good little drill because it's easy. It's an easy test, you know. Wrote it down. And with the 5th graders, this beautiful group of young kids, right? And I was there to talk to a college, actually, and they said, hey, there's some young kids over here. There's a little elementary school. I said, let me go talk to them. So we had a little chalkboard, right? A little chalkboard, whiteboard now. Put a line down the middle. And I took them through this drill, and I'm going to take it through you. Because I call it opposites. Opposites. Okay, this is really, really important. Opposites. Right? And the big question is, which side of the line do you want to be on? And it was really easy for these 5th graders, right? Really easy for these 5th graders. In fact, it's a really simple thing. And as I go through this, you're going to kind of go, this is a no-brainer. Why is he doing this? I'm doing this because I want to remind you that this is not Democrat versus Republican, okay? This is good versus evil, okay? That's what this is about. Believe it or not, you know, want to believe it or not, want to, you know, this is what it is. This is what it is. Because there's an element above the United States of America. It's a world body, and that world body wants to create something called globalism. Globalism, right? So that's really the difference is, it's really Americanism, you know, the ability to have drag brunch or stand out front there and protest and, you know, and call me all kinds of names and get away with it, right? That's Americanism. That's America, like it or not, right? Come to something like this versus globalism. Globalism means that they're gonna come in and take over our lives, our banking accounts, our health, and everything else, right? So what's the opposite of good? Any teachers in here? All right, should I give them is that okay? The opposite of good is evil? Bad. For kids now, right? I'm trying to get you guys up to the A level here, okay? The true opposite of good is bad. Evil, right? I'll take that. I'll give you the bell, whatever. What's the opposite of high? Love. What's the opposite of love? It's very good, class. What's the opposite of up? What's the opposite of top? What's the opposite of win? How many want to lose? Right? So those 6 words that I just said, good, high, love, up, top, win, those are very positive, right? And when you think about things, it's like that means that you're ascending. That means you are going up. You are moving in a very positive direction versus bad, low, hate, down, bottom, lose. Right? You're descending. You're moving in a direction that you don't want to. You don't want to be, you don't want to hate, right? You don't want to be feeling low. You don't want to be a bad person. You want to be a good person. This is simple stuff. Right? This is simple stuff. In this country right now, we have a problem with understanding which side of the line we want to be on. We really do. Okay? Because I don't want to stand up here and I could be the most vindictive, mean-spirited person in the world and have every excuse to have done that and to be that way for everything that I was dragged through in my family, and I got members of my family out in this audience. People don't, the right side of that line, the bad, low, hate, down, bottom, lose, they don't care. They don't care about that, right? They don't care about that. Truth. Good. Healthy. You're too complicated. Healthy. Sick. Right? Sick. Opposite. You guys, I'm not sure you're at the A level yet. This is 5th graders. Healthy. Sick. Happy. Who doesn't want to be happy? Right? Who doesn't want to be happy? I actually think that there's something on this back of this sheet. It said something about happy, and I cracked up when I said it, when I read it. Right? Where is it at here? Yeah, Super Happy Fun America. Is that you guys? I mean, I was like, wow, what is that? Is that like for kids or something? Super Happy, or is it a bar? Huh? Good for you. So, I mean, it's a great name. Super Happy Fun America. I mean, who doesn't want that, right? I mean, I was like, wow. Opposite of peace. Okay? 60 Minutes tonight, it's probably on, well, it'll be on a little bit later. 60 Minutes tonight is going to traipse Zelensky around and try to convince a large audience, because 60 Minutes still has a large audience, and they're going to traipse Zelensky around, who's the president of Ukraine. They're going to traipse him around, and they're going to try to convince everybody that this guy is a wonderful guy, and we've already spent $150 billion. Okay? So, and 60 Minutes is going to have him on tonight. They're going to traipse him around, and he's going to be talking about, this is a guy that basically said, if we lose here, you're going to be sending your sons and daughters over here. This is this guy. He said, I mean, what are we doing? I'm a guy that pays very, very close attention to this stuff. Very close. And I have no idea what our objectives are in Eastern Europe. None. I have no idea. In fact, the administration never stated objectives for this thing. They just are pouring money. And to, that's on the administration. But, to ding the other side, you got Speaker McCarthy, right? Speaker of the House, Republican, and he's walking around with a little, one of these little things that sticks out of somebody's suit coat pocket, and it's the Ukrainian flag. So why are we, you see what I'm saying? I mean, there is such a racket. There's such a racket in Washington, D.C. Eisenhower talked about the military-industrial complex. Kennedy, JFK warned about the CIA, right? I mean, all of these warnings that we have received over a period of time, over decades, and the American people just kind of go about our lives, and we're like, we're just going to get along. We're going to let those politicians deal with this stuff. Okay? The opposite of peace is war. And I've written a couple of books. One of the books I wrote about, in the book, I talk about peace and war. And in human history, war is the norm of human behavior. Peace is an aberration. And people look at me like, especially nowadays, because, we only have like less than 2% of our population even serving in the military. And guess what? We were at war for the last 2 decades in Afghanistan and Iraq, and one of which we surrendered to the enemy under fire and retreated and left citizens behind enemy lines. Right? 2 years ago, this past August, war. And you can go all the way back to World War II. Maybe there's a few people in here that were children or maybe babies during World War II. That's really the last war that we've won. So war is a racket. And if you haven't watched, there's some great documentaries out there on JFK. The recent ones because there's more information being exposed. I stay in touch with Bobby Kennedy, right? Bobby Kennedy Jr., right? I stay in touch with him because I like him. Yeah, and I'm glad. It's nice. I stay in touch with him. Why? Because I know, having met him and spoken with him, in his heart, he loves this country. He's got issues that I don't agree with him on, but in his heart, I know that he wants to do the right thing. And as everybody followed this business with him yesterday or the last 48 hours with the security, right? Somebody infiltrated into his security team, carrying around a badge and had a gun. The reason why we provide, and I was talking to some folks here about this issue, the reason why candidates for president are given Secret Service details, the reason why that rule exists is because of the assassination of his father. But yet, this administration, for a guy who is running for a Democrat Party, right, they will not give him that detail. They will not give him the Secret Service. And clearly, and I guarantee, I know this happens. There's threats to all these people's lives. So what has to happen? He's got to pay for it out of his pocket. Because normally the Secret Service provides that protection, and they have all kinds of resources to gather the intel. But this administration doesn't want to provide him that level of service. And the reason why that it even exists is because his father was assassinated. This is nuts, right? This is nuts. So that really bothers me because that's something I have a lot of experience in and also have spoken to him about. And it really, really, it disturbs me as an American. Okay, what's the opposite of Jesus? So I asked this to the fifth graders. You guys get D's, man. I asked this to the fifth graders. The fifth graders said Satan. Satan. A couple of you said it. But then one little young girl said, you know what? She stood up and she said, there is no opposite of Jesus. Little fifth grader. She goes, there is no. And whatever she felt that day, whatever, she's learning in the school that she's going to, I thought it was a great answer on her part. Little fifth grader, what are you, like 11 maybe, 10 years old? She said, Jesus has no opposites. And I said, God, you're right. Life, what's the opposite of life? Death, right? Life. We really just won a huge, huge victory, and because my mother-in-law is here, and I tell this, and I've written about this in another book called Letter to America, and I write about this, the story about when you're married and you're wanting to start a family and you get, your wife gets pregnant and you're going to call up, you're going to surprise your family that you're pregnant, right? You don't go and say, hey, Mom, or hey, Dad, I have an unborn child in my stomach. Right? I mean, how ridiculous is that? Right? I mean, how ridiculous is that? My mom was, especially in Rhode Island, was Democrat. She ran the right to life. She ran the whole right to life thing here in this state for a long time, many, many years. And yeah, and so, so there's this what happened? What happened? How did that happen? Like that was back in the 70s and into the 80s, and even right up until the time she died. Life and death, right? In our Constitution, and I always do this, I carry one around because it's such a simple thing. That's our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our Declaration of Independence. You can't even see it, can you? I hold it like that, right? That's it. Constitution of the United States of America, Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights are in that little tiny thing. It takes you like 3.5 minutes, because I've timed myself. It took me 3.5 minutes to read the Declaration of Independence. It takes you about 45 minutes to read the Constitution. So it doesn't take that long to read this thing. And you know what? Children in the 5th grade can actually read this thing and should be taught this thing, right? They should. Civics 101, right? I mean, it's such a simple little thing, and it's lasted 250 years, but it's being shredded right now as I speak, as I stand up here. It's being shredded, okay? And these people that protest or they go out and they think that everything is wonderful, especially young kids, right? Young kids. So this is easy. I'll give you an A if you get this right, and everybody's got to shout this out. What's the opposite of heaven? There you go. Okay, so I'll bring your grades back up. All of this kind of stuff matters because when you look at this list of opposites, these are no-brainers. These are simple concepts of life. And as a child, my father taught me to basically treat others like you like to be treated. Right? What's that called? The golden rule. The golden rule. Right? And my mother always said, let's be be a lifelong learner. Keep learning. Don't stop learning. Don't get to a place in your life where that's the way it is. That's the way it's going to be. Well, maybe you can open up your mind and you can learn a little bit more about what's happening. You can go study a little bit more. Go read a little bit more. Go find out. Start going to some of these hearings. Right now, I can tell you that from a very positive perspective, because I work with an organization called Moms for America that's based out of Nebraska. Kimberly Fletcher. Anybody here part of Moms for America? So Moms for America has been around since 2004. Kimberly Fletcher is maybe that tall. She's got a brood of beautiful children. She's been homeschooling her entire life, and she runs a national organization, and they have flipped in the country, going on now close to 300 school boards. So that's a good thing. That's these women, you know, like these young ladies that are here, right? That's these young women who are out there working their tails off, and they got kids, they got families, they have, you know, extended families, they got jobs that they're trying to do, they're trying to make ends meet, and they're out there doing this kind of stuff. Because I can tell you, I've met many of them. I've met damn near their entire leadership team. And it's all women who have families who are, you know, who are anywhere from a couple of kids to 9, 10 children. And they're out there working the streets. You know, they're trying to get people to understand we have a problem in our school system, right? Because people always ask me, well, if you got in there and you were the President of the United States, you know, what would be the first thing you do? And they expect me to say, you know, shut the FBI down. And it's not, right? I mean, I'd probably do that. But it's not that. One of the things, and most people don't even know this, you know, the first thing I'd do is I'd shut the doors of the Department of Education. Shut them. But most people don't know. I mean, the Department of Education hasn't been around for 250 years. Jimmy Carter, under his presidency, is the one that stood it up. And the Department of Education is a gigantic building filled with people that gets a couple of $1 billion budget, and you wonder, you say to yourself, how does this happen? How does this happen? You know, one of the reasons why we drove up to Woonsocket, that my buddy wanted to see where he grew up. He wanted to see the neighborhood, and kind of we drove around all the like the nice there's a nice restaurant row up there. It makes everything look, you know, nice. And then you look behind the buildings and all the mills. Like there's a lot of mills that are just decrepit. And we drove through some of the areas where he grew up. And you know, these are low-income homes. Okay, it's Section 8 housing, right? We took a photo outside of where he actually grew up, right? And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, God, in this country we are so wealthy, yet we continue to have this kind of stuff. And now when I look at what direction we're being taken, you know, and again, do I think that the election of 2020 was rigged? Yeah, I think a lot of our elections are rigged. But I think a lot of our elections. I think damn near probably the last 30 years as I look back. I mean, it's like when I look at our election system, all I want is our elections to be fair. Last thing I'd say, every single one of you that pays taxes, which is probably almost 100% of the people in here, you get audited every single year. Every single taxpayer who pays taxes gets audited, every single one. And how it may be a cursory review of your taxes because you're filing a 1040 easy, or you're filing some business, some business that you own, and maybe you own a home, and you got some other things, and there's more than a cursory review of your tax forms. That's called an audit. Okay, it may not be a formal audit where a big law firm comes in or the IRS comes in and sweeps in and is looking at every dot and every I that you've dotted and every T that you've crossed. But every single one of us gets audited. And they spend a lot of money doing it. So why is it that for the most important thing that we have in this country as a constitutional republic, why is it that we cannot look underneath the covers of our election system? What's the big deal? What is it that's hiding it? I mean, the more you try to hide it, and this is all parties, because it goes back more than just 2020. It goes back. It goes way back. Okay, the more we've looked at this thing, it goes back a long way, And it's unfair because all of us that get involved, we go like the ladies outside. I'm telling them, well, do you think that our elections are fair? She's like, oh yeah, we have great. Our elections are totally fair. And I'm like, man, I don't know how I can finish. I can't talk to you then. So why do you think that they're fair? And I'm trying to drag out, why are they fair? What is it that you don't see that I'm seeing. Right? I mean, they're not fair. They're not fair. The system is not fair. The process is not fair. And it's not fair to Democrats or Republicans. It's not fair to any American. Any American. That's all we want. That's my big message. My big message is if we don't have that, then we don't have a republic. We don't have a constitutional republic. Not a democracy. Okay? Not a democracy. And what you hear from the media is you're a danger to democracy. I've been called a danger to democracy. I might be a danger to democracy, but I'm not a danger to this constitutional republic. I'm not. And AI is another, that's a whole other block of instruction. So, you need to understand a couple of aspects. You need to understand a little bit about our history, right? And, we touch on it a little bit, but a little bit about our history and a little bit about that history of the cycles of nations. We're going through a cycle right now that I hope, I pray, is recoverable. Okay? I am not going to stand up here and tell you we're going to get him in 2024. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I personally don't think that Joe Biden's going to make it to 2024. I watch the guy, and I just don't see it. So, and there's all kinds of noise and speculation about how they're going to do, how they're going to change him out and all that kind of stuff. And that's not unprecedented, okay? Anybody that remembers Nixon or Agnew, right? Gerald Ford. He was a president of the United States who was not elected president, right? So in this period of time, that was the 70s, this period of time is much different, much different. So we're going to see, I think we're going to see something like that. So as I try to, analyze and paint scenarios, I can kind of see that because I just can't see Joe Biden making it to 2024, right? Just because of the way he is. I mean, I don't even want to joke about it because people that get older in life that can't handle their constitution or they have problems with their mind, that's a tragedy of life. That's just a component of life. And it's embarrassing to the United States of America, and and his family needs to really take a look at it. Never mind the other problems he's got with his family. But everybody's got problems with families. Everybody. These are just a little bit more severe because of the manipulation of foreign policy. That's the problem. It's not because he's a drug addict or he, likes sex with young women, younger than adult age women, okay, which is not an assumption anymore. It's because of the bribery and the corruption that we now know. And so when we look at all that, I'm saying to myself, how are we going to get out of this cycle, this downward cycle? And we're going to do it by having and going and finding. So as I look at some of these folks that stood up who are currently, representatives or something, because in the priesthood for the last 50 years and in parishes and ministries and in churches, because I've spoken to lots of them and I've spoken at a lot of churches, they don't train on leadership. We train on leadership in the military. We train on it quite a bit. And then you go and you practice it. You put it into practice. And you have to make decisions about people's lives. But in these other things that we do, we don't train them on how to be good leaders, on how to be strong leaders, on how to make big decisions. All those are just big businesses that are being run by a hierarchy. In business, you might find really good people that never served in the military, but they're just damn good businessmen or women. And they've learned leadership because they've had to deal with people's lives, right? They've had to make decisions about families. They've had to help somebody. And they just have that innate leader ability. And right now, we don't have that in politics. We don't have that in politics. So that's the politicians that are here. I don't know you, so I'm not, generalizing on every single one because maybe there's a few. But I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it because there's no compromise when it comes to the Constitution of the United States. There's no compromise when it comes to children. There's no compromise when it comes to children. And when we talk about, like I said at the beginning, just there's only a sprinkle of hands that run up about first-generation Americans. I go around this country all over the place, and I always go and have that conversation because I want to know, why did you leave, and how hard was it for you to become a citizen? And the answer is, I left because I was getting away from a dictator or getting away from communists, right? And in many cases, it took me 4 or 5 years. And I went through this process. And you know what that process is called? It's called assimilation. We assimilate people who want to come to this country to become citizens, and they go through a process. Okay? Right now, the average citizen in this country, the average citizen who's collecting Social Security gets $1,400 a month. That's the average amount of money going into, people across the country that collect Social Security, $1,400 a month. If you flew down to Mexico and crossed the border as an illegal, you're going to get $2,200 a month. See? People don't know that. You get a list, it's unbelievable. You get a ride into some state. This is a sanctuary state, right? It's a sanctuary state. That gentleman outside arguing me about God and arguing me about, we've got to have everybody on health care. I said, what about all these illegals? And who's going to pay for the health care? He said, well, it's a social program. I said, that means you're paying for it. Is that what you want to do? He starts going back into the name calling. I said, so all these illegals, and I don't know how many you have in this state. My guess is you probably got a lot. And I'm not anti-human. I'm just anti, anybody that comes in here illegally. Because, why? Because there's people that are here that came in through the right path. Like Ivan's dad. Right? I mean, that's what we have to remind ourselves. And we have to go and we have to find leaders in this country. I call them champions. I'm looking for champions in this country. As I go around, I'm looking for champions. I'm looking for people who have the guts, who have the courage, who aren't worried about the Providence Journal writing some snarky article about you online saying you're this or that, right? It's like, it just doesn't matter anymore. Doesn't matter anymore, okay? You've got to know who you are. You've got to define yourself. When I teach young people a lot, and especially young kids, I teach them, don't worry about what others say about you. Don't worry about what others think about you. Worry about what you think about yourself, right? Define yourself. Define who you are. Once you've defined who you are, then we can change the conversation of this country to what I call the destiny of America. Okay? And the destiny of America is not defined by me. It's not really defined by the Constitution. It's defined by each and every one of you as a citizen of this country. We have a path, and we have documents that help us get there, but the destiny of this country is defined by each one of you. And you have got to decide what is going to be your personal destiny, whether it's to continue to pray for somebody. I say prayer is the most powerful weapon. I'm a product of prayer. It is. Or you're good on the phone. You still got 2 good legs to move around a town to go knock on doors to inform teachers. The rise of homeschooling in this country is going through the roof. In 2 years, the change in homeschooling gets multiplied by 5. So whatever existed 2 years ago, because people suddenly said all these things about critical race theory and gender and, with 72 or 74 genders. I'd be upset if I was a gay man, because people would be going, if I said, yeah, I'm gay. No, I'm not transgender, right? Or I don't like little kids, because that's you get defined like that. Remember, I served in the United States military for the better part of 20 years of my 34 years, under the rule, don't ask, don't tell. Okay? Right? Most people don't know that because you don't pay any attention to the military, other than we love our veterans, right? We love our military. But I served there under don't ask, don't tell. I didn't care. All I cared about was, were they ready? Were they ready to fight and win? And now we've just gone this crazy, crazy route. And I'm being a little bit tongue-in-cheek speaking about this right now because, again, and I did serve, and there's others in here who have served our country in the military, and you are willing to sacrifice your life for our freedom, right? Our ability to be whatever we want to be, right? The Army was always be all you can be. Didn't say be all you can be as a Republican, as a Democrat. None of that. Be all you can be. Freedom. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to make sure that you understand that freedom has to be guarded. We say freedom is not free. Freedom must be guarded. Our vote must be guarded. We must guard the vote. Okay? Not just get out the vote. We got to guard the vote. So that means you got to be there 24/7 when it starts. Right? When they start mailing in the ballots, if they put ballot boxes around Providence County here, right up, if they start putting these ballot boxes where people are just going to go stuff, go stand there and make sure that somebody's not coming over there with 50 or 60 or 100 ballots and they just go, right? Stand there and just say, I'm videotaping this. And that might be at 2 o'clock in the morning. How many saw 2,000 Mules? Yeah, a lot of you. Good. So, those people weren't dropping the things off at most of the time, they were dropping off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was like late at night or early in the morning. So we have to be there. That's going to have to be some of the stuff that we're going to have to do, because there's this, we're not going to fix it. We're not going to be like, again, we're not going to sprinkle fairy dust and poof, we're going to fix our elections. It's not going to be fixed between now and 2024. It's not. So we have to be so active, so engaged with all of the different issues that are going on in this state. Okay? All the different issues. And there's a lot of them, and I know there's a lot of them going on in every state in the country. And believe me, the creeping infiltration of communism always exists and has existed for a long, long time. It just so happens in the last 20 to 30 years, it has really permeated into our very government, into the institutions of our government, and it's got to be stopped. It's got to be stopped. Okay, folks, I know it's been a long afternoon. Thank you all very, very much. God bless you. God bless America. And it's great to be back in Rhode Island. Thank you. Thank you.